Hey there, Indy fans. Joe here from Further Adventures. Real quick note. Yeah, the news is coming in fast and furious regarding Indy 5. Just want to let you all know out there, Keith and I recorded this particular segment just before it was announced that Spielberg would not be directing Indy 5, that news was out there. So we recorded the segment after Harrison Ford had done his interview where he said that they were going to be filming this summer. So that was the news that we had at the time. I'm sure Ed, you probably already heard at the beginning of the show, has been getting into all of the news. We are just all working behind the scenes as fast as we can here at the IndyCast just to keep up with it. Look, as we get closer and closer to Indy 5, that news is going to come faster and faster and faster. So we're trying to keep up with it. We will get into that in a little bit more detail in our next segment, but just wanted to give you guys a little bit of context as far as the segment you're about to hear right now. So we just had a little bit of news there, so we reacted to that. More on the way. So sit back and enjoy the latest episode of The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones.
Stanley presents, oh, hey, that's me, The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones. Excelsior. Welcome.
It's time for the further adventures of Indiana Jones.
Sharing your adventures is an interesting experience.
Pack your bag, grab your passport, and prepare to go globetrotting with Dark Horse Comics' classic four-color adventures of Indiana Jones.
Jones? Jones!
Dr. Jones, the eminent archaeologist. Hard to believe it.
Now, what shall we talk about?
Welcome, IndyCast listeners and further fans to the Further Adventures of Indiana Jones. I am Joe Stuber, launching that Raiders red line all the way over to the land of Elsa Schneider, a couple of young Indy adventures, and of course, my Further Adventures partner, Keith Voss. Keith, so glad to be talking Indy with you once again.
Yes, it is. Hello, Joe. Hello, IndyCast listeners. Oh my God, we are talking Indy once again because there's a lot of Indy to talk about today. Yeah. A lot of Indy to talk about.
You think?
Oh my goodness. I mean, first of all, we have a very special guest set to join us in the Raven's Nest. The Tomb of the Gods writer Rob Williams will be along in just a few minutes. But
round of whiskey.
Oh, there's going to be more than one.
All right.
We finally got some legit Indy news. Finally.
Yeah.
From the man in the hat himself, no less. Indy 5 starting to film in 2 months.
Is that crazy? Okay, look, here's the deal. Okay, we've done we sound like a broken record. We've been doing this for years. Every year we get together in December for the IndyCast round. Look, can you guys finally give me a little bit of credit? You guys have been, I don't know. It's pushing up 2022. It's going
changing writers.
Writers. I don't know if we're going to get it. Who's been the constant through all this going, Disney bought it, we're getting it, Ford's shooting? Who's been the guy?
At Dallista?
All right, sure, why not?
I mean,
sure,
all right.
Why not?
And Joe Stuber.
Come on, you got a little love for me here.
And Joe Stuber.
I've been saying it all
definitely
along.
have.
You don't spend cash if you don't want the product. Ford is shooting this summer. Okay, Ed, go to work. Get us on set, right?
Yeah, Ed. Now it's all up to you. Now it's all up to you. You get us on set.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean,
Ford is confirmed.
That's gotta happen.
Kathleen Kennedy is confirmed. Okay, so we alluded to this on the last episode of the IndyCast a little bit. So you and I this is our shot to kind of talk Indy 5 in reality. It's happening.
Yeah,
Ford's shooting. What do we do here? Like, do we guess what's going to happen? Like, I'm still thinking.
No, we wait patiently.
No, we'll never do that.
Guessing. There's no I think this is going to happen because that works out so well for Star Wars.
Okay, but I'm gonna say what I want to happen, and I've said it before. I think you go Last Crusade template in doing a flashback sequence, but putting that flashback sequence in the era of your radio drama of the 40s of Soldier Indy, that era that we want to see developed with a young indie actor, whoever it is. But
or just de-aging. If it's just a quick flashback.
I don't want that. No. I don't want to see Ford de-aged. I want to see the actor, because we've talked about this before. Okay. If River Phoenix, the tragedy, but if he had survived, I wanted him to become Indiana Jones. I think that would have worked out. So I think whoever it is that Disney wants to move forward, they're going to do it. Look, folks, I've said Indy 5's happening all along. I'm going to say Indy 6, 7, 8. Disney's going to put out an Indiana Jones movie every 2 years. They're going to beat it into the ground like Star Wars. We're going to get some crap ones. We're going to get some good ones. Just hang on for the ride. Hang on to those bars, right? But we're going to get the guy, and I think that guy needs to be in the intro, right? And have a little mini adventure, and then go into Harrison Ford, riding off into the sunset, and then we've got our 40s Indiana Jones. I've said it all along. I think it's going to happen. That's what I want. What does Keith Voss want?
This is gonna hurt, Joe.
This is what makes this segment so good.
Right.
Is that sometimes you and I are on the same page. Sometimes we are wildly different.
We are not on the same page here. I want Indy 5 to be the curtain call for the
Forever?
Harrison Ford version of the character.
Right.
Okay. For Harrison portraying Indy.
Right.
I don't want any more movies after this.
You don't want Indy 6?
I think I want no. I want it to go to some type of Disney Plus, some type of streaming TV animated show, either in the vein of Young Indiana Jones Chronicles or an animated show that like we've mentioned before. I don't think we should keep going on.
Why can't you have both? Why can't you have both?
Why
can't you have both?
Yeah, I just don't think I want it. I want another Harrison Ford Indy film. We're getting that, and you know what? Let's see what we get. Yeah. And maybe we're gonna hate this movie and we don't want anything to do with Indiana Jones. Yeah, but we won't.
Love it.
We won't.
Love it. Cut to like 5 years ago. 5 years from now, when we're still doing Further Adventures. How are we gonna do this for 5 more years? But cut to 5 years from now in the IndyCast when you're like, "Hey, Joe, yeah, you're right." Yeah.
Let's not get carried away here. I want a fantastic Indy 5. I want an animated series streaming on Disney Plus, I want another comic series, whether it's a limited series, whether it's in the vein of Further Adventures of Indiana Jones back in the old Marvel days. I want another comic book series, and to the character to be continued in that way.
I want it all. I want it now.
Can't always get what you want.
We're just mixing.
What you need.
We're just mixing up rock groups now.
We need Indy 5.
Queen, Rolling Stone. We're mixing up rock groups. What we're getting today, we started back in 2015.
Yes.
Is this insane?
Oh my goodness.
5 years ago, we started on the IndyCast with episode 210. We started talking about Tomb of the Gods.
That's right.
Right. We invited artist Steve Scott into the Raven's Nest. We sat down. We knocked back a few. We talked about it. That was like 5 years ago.
It's amazing. Everything that we've covered, all of the artists and writers, all the guests that we've had. It's been quite a ride. It's not over yet.
No.
Over yet.
No, because we got the writer.
Right. We certainly do. So why don't we head on into the Raven's Nest to talk about Indiana Jones and the Tomb of the Gods with writer Rob Williams.
Now, joining us now in the Raven's Nest at the VIP table is the author behind some of the coolest comic book tales featuring classic characters like Judge Dredd, Wolverine, RoboCop. He's written stories for Suicide Squad, the Star Wars universe, and of course, our favorite adventure, Indiana Jones. Hey kids, it's Rob Williams. Rob, welcome to the IndyCast and the Raven's Nest.
Hey guys, nice to. It's very cold outside the Raven's Nest. It's sort of like an Arctic Tibetan wind blowing in. I feel like some kind of crazed Nazi is about to sort of break in at any point.
Yeah,
well, we'll get you a whiskey. We'll get you a whiskey, and we'll warm you up. Hopefully, we won't burn the place down.
Exactly, but then it'll catch light on the bar, and it's going to go to hell. So
we promise not to smash the bottle anywhere. We promise to keep the fireplace roaring. Yeah.
At least not yet. Let's see how everything goes.
I tell you, look, that intro doesn't even begin to cover it. So we talked about. Look, I got to ask you first, right off the bat, and we'll get into some of your background, how you got into comics and all those different things. But Judge Dredd, you've got kind of a history with Dredd, right?
Yeah, I've been writing Dredd now for a good few years, and sort of in recent years, I mean, I've been fortunate enough. I've written the pilot script for the TV show, which is
you drove me right into it.
Currently in development, shall we say? So
okay,
that's Mega City 1, yes.
It is, yeah, and it's. I mean, I like a lot of these things. I grew up reading 2000 AD. If you're a comic fan in the UK of a certain age, in the 80s. I mean, I read a lot of American comics as well at the same time, but 2000 AD and Dredd was really kind of I feel like that's almost like the DNA of a lot of comic creators. We grew up on that stuff. So to find yourself writing the character and telling stories in that world is just it is one of those things where you have to remind yourself you're very lucky to. The child who started reading those comics in the 80s would never believe what the grown-up Rob Williams has been lucky enough to do. So it's very cool.
Well, this kind of is in my wheelhouse because I do another podcast called Comic Book Central, where comic books come to life. And this, the live action TV show. Can you give us an update? Because Carl Urban, right, has expressed interest. Is that accurate? Is that not accurate? Or is that we've moved past that? Where are we at with that? Can you give us an update?
I really can't tell you anything juicy, I'm afraid.
Give us something. Give us a little. Keith, order another round of drinks at the VIP table. Let's get him liquored up and see what he can spill
whiskey?
Here.
I mean, for the drinks, but no, it's
all right, fair enough.
Bear in mind that this is a property based around a fascist, ruthless judge who will kill its creators stone dead if they say anything. But yeah, I mean, same as you guys. I've read that Carl is interested in coming back, and I thought he was terrific in the Alex Garland movie, and
Have you had lunch with Carl Urban? Have you had lunch with Carl Urban anytime recently?
Personally, I've not. No, neither have I had lunch with Sylvester Stallone as well. But I'm aware of.
Were you grooving on the Sly's movie or not?
Yeah, not so much.
That's fair.
No,
I don't think he was either.
No, it looked good. I mean, it's. I think genuinely, I think I've seen it once. I think I saw it in the cinema and kind of went, not too great, and never revisited.
For some of us, once is enough.
Indeed. There's a long history, as you guys know, of sort of like loving characters and comics, and a movie would be made, and you go along all excited, and you come away, maybe not. Maybe never watching that again. They should be burnt to the ground. But
Keith, I'm a little leery about asking that question. Though, does that count Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull?
I think that's a whole other.
He kind of led into it.
Yeah, I don't want to get in trouble, but yeah, I did have. That was one of those ones where, I'd been asked. We'd been working on Indiana Jones and Tomb of the Gods, which was really exciting. A big indie fan. There's a new indie movie after all these years, finally. And I went to see Kingdom Skull, and I must admit, did not particularly enjoy it.
So it's fair. You're in a safe place. You're in a safe place. The indie community is divided on this film. Keith and I think we kind of land on we like it because we kind of like Indiana Jones.
I think time has been a bit kinder to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I think after it's just so it is very different from the other three films as far as tonally. I mean, you have interdimensional beings. So I think once the dust settles a bit, you go back and watch it. It's actually a pretty entertaining film. I mean, if you just forget about the little a few things here and there, like the monkeys. It doesn't last very long. I mean, it's got some decent action scenes, and it's just always great to see Harrison Ford put the hat back on and get back out. Yeah,
and it's. I mean, I know a lot of people hate it, but I don't dislike the hiding in the surviving the nuclear explosion.
Okay, there we go.
All right. Hey, I mean, I have a theory on that. I always mention it that Indy drank from the Grail, and his body is completely healed, and he's like Superman now. He's like Wolverine. He's got adamantium bones, and he's got the body of a 20-year-old now. So I think that's a. That's a good way.
It's kind of weird because Temple of Doom was on here over Christmas, and I haven't watched Temple of Doom in some time, and I sat down to watch it, and there's you mythologize certain things when you're younger as well. I mean, there's aspects of Temple of Doom I really, really like, but I mean, I did kind of, with my more sort of critical head on, I was kind of thinking, the entire sort of last 2/3 of that movie pretty much take place in the same building and in the basement, and it feels like it's really struggling to kind of, like Spielberg at that stage is absolutely knows what he's doing and keeps it all moving masterfully, but it feels like it kind of stops geographically in a spot, and it kind of struggles because of that, really. You know what I mean? But so I think when you're back in whenever Temple of Doom came out, 83 or whatever it was, came up at the cinema, loving Temple of Doom, and then you get your critical head on, and you can see certain things that not quite. You know what I mean? So,
you're looking at it as a writer. You're looking at it as a writer, yes. I think, at that point.
Right.
And
exactly.
I don't know that I've ever looked at it like that, but it kind of is. We'll get into that because I think that era, that type of Indiana Jones, that version of Indiana Jones really helped inform your version of Indiana Jones. We'll get into that. But you're a comic book kid, that's for sure. All-Star Comics, that was your intro?
I think so. I mean, okay. I veer back and forth on this, but I did. I had a copy of All-Star Comics. I had so long the cover came off, and it was the Justice Society of those characters. And I kind of got to sit in a room in DC. I was working for DC Comics a few years back, and they flew a bunch of us out to Los Angeles. And there was a bunch of creators in the room, and we were talking about our first ever comics. And then Paul Levitz was there, and he kind of turned around and went, "Well, I wrote that." So that was kind of cool.
Oh my goodness!
And he sent me I've got a copy here. He sent me a copy afterwards and signed it. Which
it has a cover.
Really nice. Yeah, the copy he sent me has a cover. Yeah, it's a trade collection. But I think it might have been that. It may have been. I've got a really vague memories of an Adam Strange Justice League comic. Yeah, I don't really know. I'll put money on it. Maybe the All Star and Keith Giffen drew that, and I've still got the copy here. It's amazing artwork as well, So that was like, I didn't know who Dr. Fate was. The cliffhanger was Dr. Fate is dead, and I was like, oh my god! And then you're in from that point, and sort of you get a lifetime of reading comics from that point on.
Okay, so that may inform the writing aspect too, because that you got hooked on the character, you got attached to a character, that something happened. And now you're invested, right?
Well, it's a cliffhanger, right? And that's one thing. Going back to Indy, that's one thing. Indy comes from the Republic serials and cliffhangers, and writing for 2000 AD, which is kind of like, it's almost like comic writing university in this country, and so many writers like Alan Moore, Garth Ennis, Grant Morrison, all came through 2000 AD, and one thing that teaches you is. It's 6-page chunks, and there has to be a big cliffhanger at the end, So in that sense, they that dramatic structure is kind of like is knocked into you early, So maybe I responded to the fact that first All-Star comic, a character I did not know who the character was, but they were dead at the end, and it was like, oh my god! Of course they weren't dead really, but that's the trick, right? Is just keeping people wanting to come back for more.
That's the thing. You got locked into the character. How did you go? Okay, so trace the early path for us.
I trained as a journalist, and I just had my intention was never to be a comic book writer. I just didn't think that was something that was feasible. Because growing up, apart from 2000 AD, all the comics I read were American, and Marvel, DC, and I just didn't think it was feasible for someone who grew up in the South Wales valleys, which I did, which is felt a million miles away from even the big towns of London in the UK, rather than sort of New York, where these comics were being made. So I trained as a journalist, and then I was working for a video production company, and I was writing really boring scripts for corporate videos. But what they did were teaching me to write for visuals, albeit for really dull subject matter. So I thought, oh, you know what, I'll write a comic script, just because I'd always been a fan. And I was very fortunate at the time. A new company was starting up called ComX. I just moved to Bristol, and the main comic convention at the time in the UK was held in Bristol. So I went along and I just handed this script over to these publishers, and I didn't know what I was doing, because I didn't know that you had to pitch back in those days or anything. I handed over a full script. And then about 3 months went by, and they rang me and they said, look, we just read this script and we love it, and we want to publish it. And they kind of hooked me up with a really fantastic artist called Trevor Hairsine, who kind of managed to file away my rough edges, because it was the first script I'd ever written. And that was a book called Class War. And that came out in the American market and got some good press. And that led to, it opened a lot of different doors. Suddenly sort of people like Marvel and DC and Dark Horse, okay, we're interested in me pitching. And all of a sudden I had this new avenue of a career open up, which was never the plan at all. So I was still working as a freelance journalist, working for freelancer for magazines like GQ in the UK, but I do a bit of comic writing on the side. And then as time went on, the comic writing became more and more, and the journalism became less and less.
Well, speaking of Dark Horse, it seemed that you also dipped your toes into another Harrison Ford series, Star Wars. How exactly did you get involved with Lucasfilm and wanting to tell stories in the Star Wars universe as well?
Well, I mean, I was, growing up, Star Wars was, probably my one great love. So, I mean, I forget how I got into it, but I suspect I wrote to. I wrote to the Dark Horse team who were doing Star Wars comics at the time, and I'd had these other, Class War being published. I forget a few other things as well, and just said, look, I'd love to write for you guys. So at the time, Dark Horse were doing an anthology book called Star Wars Tales, which was brilliant because it just allowed sort of newbies like me to do a little, I think a little I did an 8-pager. And it was.
I love Tales, and actually, there's a great indie story in there. If you've ever seen that one.
Oh, really? Who did
Star
that?
Wars? Yeah. Oh my goodness, was that Hayden Blackman, Joe? Do you remember?
Oh, it might have been. Yeah. Okay.
The Han Solo meets Indiana Jones.
The Han Solo meets Indiana Jones, which is a fantastic story. But anyway, I loved Star Wars Tales. So sorry.
No. It's so they let me do. There's a really cool guy there, an editor at the time called Jeremy Barlow. I think he was the assistant editor on Tales. Jeremy and I got on well, and I pitched Ghosts of Hoth, which is still I really like. It's a cool little 8-pager, which is Han and Chewie and the rebel base in Hoth, and it's like who lived in that base before the rebels got there. Basically.
Yeah,
they didn't carve out that base; someone else was there. So Chewie gets haunted by sort of the ghosts of the travelers who lived there first, and of course they're trying to take him to what killed them, and what killed them.
These are the victims, yeah, like sort of haunting him, right? Right.
Yeah,
that was a fantastic story. I remember it. Yeah,
absolutely beautiful art by Carrie Nord. Again, like so much of what you do in comics is. You get lucky with if an artist kills it, they just like lift the entire thing. And Carrie Nord did, and it was a really nice little 8-pager. I think Jeremy liked it and asked me to do more, and then I did a few other sort of things for Tales. I did a longer ongoing story.
So you were allowed to pitch your own story ideas to them, or were some of them also given to you by Lucasfilm to develop, or?
No, I think it was all me. I think
Nice.
we just had free reign to kind of,
Nice.
and you'd go kind of like hog wild with it, and occasionally get it wrong. I've got a vague memory of Jeremy saying to me, "We can't, Star Wars. We don't really do telepathic dragons." It was like, all right, let me recalibrate and have another go.
But what a playground for a writer.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was I did a wedge short for Tales, I seem to remember, and what else? Yeah, did a 4-part series, and then they asked, I forget the lineage, I might get it slightly wrong, but they asked me then to launch a new Star Wars book called Rebellion with an artist called Brandon Badeau, who again was terrific. And that was riffing off, I think, if I remember right, there was an existing storyline with a friend. It was Tank, actually. That's right. It's coming back to me. You remember Tank, Luke's friend from Tatooine, if you've got a good Star Wars memory, who is vaguely mentioned in, I think, the New Hope comics. So his Tank went off and joined the Empire, and then sort of it becomes this kind of sort of Captain Ahab white whale thing of Tank has to track down his old childhood friend who just turns out to be the man who blew up the Death Star. So that was all kind of fun, and that was, we didn't have a lot of contact with Lucasfilm. I suspect Dark Horse were editorial acting as a bit of a buffer. I think they would take the Lucasfilm notes and then pass certain notes on to me or whatever, but I didn't have a lot of direct contact with Lucasfilm.
Okay, that leads us in, because Keith and I have interviewed a lot of creative folks from basically the Marvel years too. Run-ins with Lucasfilm were never fun. Is that fair, right, Keith? Would you say that they, especially when you think of John Byrne and those folks on Indiana Jones? Okay, so
I was reading the other day, I don't know if it was you guys, but weirdly it came up on Twitter and someone was talking about, which I read the John Byrne indie comics, which were reprinted in a UK monthly, like black and white. Right. And I absolutely loved them because I was a big John Byrne fan at the time. And then he was kind of gone. But then someone on Twitter the other day raised that he had creative issues with Lucasfilm. Is that correct?
That's correct, to say the least.
Very correct.
Yeah, he's blogged about it, and then he stopped blogging about it forever. He doesn't. Well, I mean, that's the thing. That was what Keith and I were curious about. Any pushback from Lucasfilm, anything that reached you?
I was actually telling my other half in the car, and I've got one good story, but I can't tell it because it's kind of.
This is what we want. This is what we live for.
More whiskey.
More whiskey. Bring it.
More whiskey. More whiskey to the bar.
Marion.
Another run. Get the flaming hot poker and poke it right in my face. Go on. But then, anyway, look. All I will say is that.
Can you give us a flavor of it? Can you give us a flavor?
Yeah. Okay. I'll try.
All right.
So we were. I think I genuinely forget the timescale to a degree, but I think I pitched. We were looking for a MacGuffin for Indy, right? So for this new series, which is always part of a trick, and I know Lucas has talked about this, because it's so perfect, him going after the Ark of the Covenant and going after the Holy Grail, but they kind of struggled, Crystal Skull, and like, what could he be looking for? And a suggestion came through from Lucasfilm, someone at Lucasfilm, not from Lucasfilm, the company, I'd like to point out, and an individual at Lucasfilm. And I had to sort of go, look, we can't do this, guys, because we'll have to go into hiding.
What was the MacGuffin?
It was something.
What was the MacGuffin?
It would have offended an entire religion on this planet. Okay. And this was like, if we do this, everyone involved with this comic will no longer be able to live in. We will have to go hiding. People will be looking for us if we do this. And it kind of went away. But it's, I mean, I think we knocked a few. I forget who it was. I think it was me and Jeremy Barlow basically kind of went, well, what would be kind of cool? And whether or not you think this is a good idea now is another matter. But to do sort of like, to mix sort of indie with Cthulhu, sort of Lovecraft, basically, was where we were going with it, which we kind of thought was fun. At that point, my memory is we had no idea that Crystal Skull was going to do, grey aliens and a UFO at the end, and all. We were told nothing about what.
Well,
Right.
that's what I wanted to ask, is that if there was going to be any, did they give you any info at all and said, okay, look, you can come up with whatever you want, but this is kind of off the table?
Yeah, no, they didn't. They didn't.
Okay.
As my memory, and I might be wrong. My memory is that we weren't told anything that was in the film.
Okay.
And I've had similar experience. I was writing Suicide Squad for DC when the Suicide Squad film was coming out. No one told me anything that was coming. So in my experience, and other people might find differently. They tend to just not do that. They don't kind of go, here's sign an N. They won't even go sign an NDA and here's the script to read, which you think would be healthy, because when two things are coming out at the same time. But no, I think it was Jeremy and I sort of came up with the riff on the Cthulhu mythos thing and H.P. Lovecraft, and that'd be kind of fun. But once we had that, it was. And bear in mind, I've just reread it. I mean, I think I agree. There's certain things about it in retrospect I still like very much. There's certain things. This is always the way I suppose I'd change if I was writing it again now. I think it was just I love angry indie. I probably, like I was saying earlier about Temple of Doom, but it's got my favorite all-time indie moment in it, which is because when he shouts, "We are going to die." You know what I mean? So it's kind of trying to get that kind of in there, which I kind of do at times. I'm not entirely sure it always comes across in sometimes how the art portrays it.
No, two indie nerds here. It does.
Okay, cool. There's
nice a moment where Indy rips off or tells he basically tells Leroy to take over Sherp, and the way he says "come on," you could definitely hear Ford in there, like, you know what I mean? Like it's
nice. Because actually, when I reread that just before the call, I was kind of going, the way this is dropped, because what I had in mind when I wrote that was he's got no sexual interest whatsoever there. He's just angry and he's in a horrible position. He's trying to get him out of it, and she kind of goes, what, and it's a comedic kind of, but then he has enough and just rips the shirt off him and she punches him or something.
Well, no, full disclosure, Keith and I did not rehearse this before we interviewed you, and we both came to the same conclusion. You found Indy's voice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you, guys. Cheers.
In ways that we have not seen before. How did you do that? Did you just do tons of homework on the movies? Like,
no,
how did you find
Indy? It's just, if you love it, and it's like, and funny enough, that Hans. I love Ford in Empire Strikes Back, and that Ghosts of Hoth story. He's just in that. When I wrote that, he's like angry. Angry Harrison Ford is amazing back in that era. Yes. You know what I mean? It's and so much of it is when he's going through all this stuff is. I mean, he's so good, in Raiders and especially, but there's the vulnerability of he gets a crap beat out of him, but he's just, for the majority of it, he's just really angry with everyone, and it's
but there's fantastic. These little asides that you do, like these little, like even in the lettering is smaller. These little asides that are very Ford-like. You so tapped into the essence of the Indy character. I'm going to say, let's get into it. It's an amalgam of Temple of Doom Indy and Raiders Indy. It's that in between.
In between, right?
Yeah.
How did you find the in between?
I don't know. It's just I watched Raiders a lot, and I just think, as much as I love various aspects of that movie. I mean, Kasdan's screenplay is amazing, and I kind of sort of read the screenplay, kind of tried to sort of distill certain things which I felt like a good indie story needed, and I think the voice is just. I mean, I think I'm fairly good at that. I've done a fair bit of licensed work. You know what I mean? And I think if you love the movie and if you love the character and you can almost kind of hear it. I've written Doctor Who, and I did a one-off Ghostbusters, and Venkman and Egon was just there, But I guess I'm a child of the '80s, so these were the films that I mainlined. So I can.
It's in your DNA.
I think so. I mean, that was not sort of, how do I get the voice? How do I get the voice? The voice was just there. That's the easy part. I think the hard part is, and the bit rereading it, which if I had back, I'd like to have another go at, is sort of giving more time to certain characters. I think it's too short. I think if
characters such as, what would you change?
Well, I thought there's a character in it he's an English archaeologist, and he's been looking for his father, and he lived as a Tibetan monk for a while and shaved his head. And
Alex.
Alex. Yeah, I thought he's I was reading it and I'd completely forgotten about him. I thought when he turns up for the first time, I thought, he's really cool. He's a cool character.
Yeah.
I don't really do anything with him.
You kill him.
And
spoiler alert.
Kill him. And again, I was thinking, wow, man, he's not really. So I mean, yeah, there's things like that where you think I'd like that, but I think Janice Leroy is kind of fun, but she needs more depth.
Other characters that you did decide to bring along and spend some more time with. One of them is Marcus Brody. What made you decide to want to bring Marcus along for the ride, so that we actually see him much more than we see him in Raiders, and more than for sure than we've seen him in Temple of Doom?
Yeah.
Oh, because again, he's amazing. He's like Denham Elliott is so good in briefly in Raiders. Love him in Raiders in such a small little part.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's just.
But you didn't make him a buffoon.
No, I think he's a well, come on, that's a great gag, isn't it?
It is.
He's halfway there already, and then it cuts to him. Does anyone you speak English?
I love your Marcus more than Last Crusade Marcus.
Yeah, I love the hat and so on, and just the little moments of smiles, again, like what we mentioned before with like the smaller dialogue and the balloons. I think you also captured Marcus's voice perfectly, and it also seems like it's in between the Marcus that we see in Raiders and the Marcus that we see in Last Crusade. It's kind of a really, really good in between.
I think he's kind of he plays it. Denham Elliott plays it for laughs in Last Crusade. In Raiders, he's not in the movie for long, but he plays it like you totally believe that he is
very serious.
He's a very serious man. He's a contemporary of Indy's. He knows Forrestal. He knows, and there's that great moment where Elliott plays it beautifully, where he says, well, it's like nothing you've ever gone after before, and he looks scared for a second, and it's kind of like just building up the stakes, of course. But it's just a terrific actor, not just in those movies, but in a lot of other movies. So I mean, just if someone gives you the keys to an indie thing, you're going to go, well, I'm going to have Denham Elliott along. He's because Marcus is the character I genuinely loved. It's and again, so then because you have affection for these characters, the voices kind of come to you. I think
Did you intentionally try to dial back the comedic Marcus from Last Crusade because it's set pre-Raiders?
Yeah, it's I kind of there's things like they go to Tibet and he's wearing the wrong clothes, and I just figured that's kind of who he'd be anyway, because Indy dresses the way Indy dresses for a reason. You know what I mean? I mean, sure. Even when Marcus turns up in on a whaling ship and he's followed them to Siberia, the first thing Indy says to him, "Why are you wearing that hat?"
That hat. That's great.
You do get the impression that he's not been out in the field. As any, he's not Indy. He
at
is
least
an
as much as he used to be, because you do get a sense in Raiders when he even tells Indy is like, a couple of years ago I would have gone after it myself. Right. I'm rather envious. So he does have experience, but he's definitely lost a step.
And to the very nature of sort of Indy is just this. For he is an intellectual and he is an academic and he does wear a tweed jacket, but. He's Indiana Jones. He's this incredibly. He punches people. He swings. He has a whip and all these things. And Denham Elliott, he might have gone after it himself, but he's an academic going after these things. You know what I mean? Which is great. And right. He's not. I would not be entirely sure if Denham Elliott would be Malcolm would be swinging over fiery chasms and things like that. You know what I mean? He might have gone after it himself, but it's going to be a little different.
No, totally
he might
nailed
not have
it.
succeeded.
Totally nailed the characters. Totally nailed the characters. Let's talk about Janice Leroy.
Yeah.
What was your inspiration for her? I see her, Keith. I don't know how you see her, but I see her as the perfect blend of Marion and Belloc.
Yeah, I think that's kind of it.
And leaning a little bit toward Mac from Crystal Skull.
Maybe.
Did you? But you didn't have anything from Crystal Skull to base anything on. But it's like kind of that mercenary kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, she's kind of like, what I was aiming for was like that sort of, that character who, she's kind of his equal in a lot of ways. She goes after these type of things herself, but so she will sell him, and she does at one point, just works for the Nazis. She's not bothered by that, but you kind of know she's going to come down on the side of the Angels when push comes to shove right at the end. And sort of, I just wanted someone who was kind of a match for Indy in a lot of ways, and not necessarily the Kate Capshaw type of character in Temple of Doom, and I love Marion in Raiders, but even then I thought it was kind of she's Raven, Abner's daughter, who gets pulled into this world where I just thought it'd be fun to have a character who is Indy's equal, you know what I mean? And the female version of him in a lot of kind of ways. I'm not 100% certain I pulled that off, but that's what I was aiming for anyway.
No, it's like the female Belloc, but then she throws that punch like Marion.
Yeah.
So it's. I think you hearken back to Raiders enough. Keith, Friedrich von Hassel.
Oh my God, that spring-loaded knife! Jeez, you watch James Bond much?
Yeah. Well, he's got to have a hook. I mean, he could literally have a hook. We could
literally have a hook for a hand, right?
Yeah.
And then, right, exactly. But
he's not the most nuanced villain. I think it's fair to say, but it's like sometimes there's a time and a place for a non-nuanced villain,
No, I think Keith and I love all this too, and the fact that you brought Jock Lindsay back into the fold.
Yeah, I love that.
You're definitely a fan of Raiders of the Lost Ark, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean it's my favorite. I mean, there's aspects of them all I like very much, but yeah, Raiders is I think is by far the best movie of the of all the indies. But and I think as a screenplay it's amazing. I think Ford is just kind of it's that moment in time where cinematically Spielberg is just absolutely on top of his game. The editing's out of his world, and Ford just drops in his lap just as one of the great leading men, basically. And it's
in a bottle.
Yeah, it really is an extraordinary film. I mean, if you just look at that opening sequence where you don't see Indy for a while. I mean, he's got his, they go in through the jungle and all that, and even before they go into the temple, and all the amazing sequence. But just that, where you just Spielberg building up who is this guy? And you see him in shadow and everything. Yeah. It's just, you're in the hands of people at that point in time who just absolutely know what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you give us your own little, a homage to the opening of Raiders with Indy and Marcus and Alex running from the bandits, yelling for Jock to start the engines. It's really great. It's a nice homage.
It's kind of like a fanboy. Yeah, that is a bit of a fanboy moment, unfortunately. But I'm a bit of a plane geek as well, so I thought having him in a DC-3 on the side of a mountain, and then the engines don't start.
With Obi-Wan on the fin. Was that
yes.
also your idea?
I think that's the artist. I don't think that.
Well, you jumped into it. Can we talk about the amazing Steve Scott for a little bit?
Yes. I mean, it was weird because Dustin Weaver was initially going to be the artist on the series, and Dustin did some amazing designs. And I genuinely forget why, but then Dustin couldn't do it. And then Steve came on to replace him, and especially I think that first issue, I suspect Deadline's got to, because by the last issue, Steve is replaced by
Bart Sears.
My God. Thank you very much. Who again is a great artist, but it's like it's always a shame, I think, when one artist starts a series, you can't have a full kind of them dealing with the delivering the entire thing. Steve did a terrific job. Great likenesses, but like especially in that first issue, the action sequence where they're running across sort of the New
York City,
the girders in New York City skyscraper, and I just kind of
fantastic.
thought, Steve just did a terrific job on that.
He described your script for issue number 1 as amazing and brilliant, and it could be an Indiana Jones film. So there's that. He also mentioned he couldn't get the Indiana Jones theme out of his head while he was illustrating.
Well, that's a great.
Did you have a similar experience at all? John Williams playing in the background?
I think what you do is really helpful. It's a little musical shorthand where I've written Superman before, and you can, if you're stuck, you just go da, 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 and then suddenly you think, all he really needs at this point is to leap over something.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Sort of punch
puts
someone.
you right back into it, doesn't it?
Yeah. It does. It's just like it clicks you into gear, and similar with Williams' sort of Superman theme. You kind of hear that, and you go, yeah, right, I get it. I know, I know the essence of what this has to be. Yeah, I mean, it's always weird doing these books where you've been fans of them. You kind of you're caught between two sort of masters in a way. One of you is like kind of you love it and you want to just kind of partly copy what you love about it, but then you've also got to try and do something of yourself, put something a little new into it, and something of your own voice. There's a line in Tomb of the Gods which I'm rereading I really like, which is, I forget who says it, but it says like, our job is to sort of find history, is not to write it. And I kind of thought, oh, okay, there you go. There's a little bit of theme, but I was kind of, I was trying to work out what my theme was writing it, and I think it was probably that. So that's possibly it's a little moment which it'll be easy to miss, but I think that's probably what I was trying to say somewhere in there.
No, I think that was Marcus and kind of bridging that gap from Temple of Doom Indy to Raiders Indy, which also I think kind of leads into Crystal Skull Indy, because at the end of Crystal Skull, that's why I'm down here, sister. You remember that?
He believes. Yep. He believes. That's why he's down there. Yeah, but it was always about the search for knowledge.
And that leads into a little bit of the Tomb of the Gods. How would you describe what they meet at the end?
Well, it was interestingly, I think there was when you see sort of the final finale where sort of like Indy punches the Nazi down into the pit. I think there was a version of that page where you saw like a tentacle coming around the corner.
I wanted to,
but I don't think it's in my trade paperback.
It's not in the trade paperback. I wanted to ask you about that because I have all of the issues separately as well, but they are in the States with all of my other comic books, and I only have the trade paperback. And I remember, as I was rereading this, I said I could have sworn you barely see a tentacle coming out. So the only time you really see it now is in Alex's father's cave, where he scrawled all over the wall, and now you see like sort of in the background you see a drawing of a hole with some tentacles coming out. It's the only allusion you get to kind of what could be down there.
So what is that?
I'm not crazy. Yeah.
What is that? What is that? We got the guy. What is it?
If I can, maybe I can dig out the scripts if I've still got them on a hard drive or something. But I think the general idea was behind those big doors, there was a creature there, which was effectively like a Cthulhu-esque kind of creature who'd been asleep. And it's all sort of at the Mountains of Madness. They go to they go to an Arctic sort of place, and so all that was in there. And then sort of,
there's tentacles everywhere. There's like, the wall collapses. There's tentacles everywhere, and then it's the knowledge.
Yeah, there's a double-page spread of Bart Sears draws where you get that sense. But there was definitely at least a panel, I think, where the Nazi sees something and goes. You see him going insane, basically. They managed. They put the key in. They open the door. Then it's just like the Nazi is going to. Then Indy throws him down into the pit, and it's got the dynamite that Marcus Brody brought along.
Marcus brought, and
then Indy has a choice, because And again, I think I could have done this better if we'd had more space. I think, part of inherent in Indy is he wants to see what's down there. You know, it's like he wants to see what's in the Ark at the end, but he the Raiders, but he knows.
Well, but Spalco and Crystal Skull, I want to know. So are they in the space between spaces?
I don't know. Yes.
All right.
I think
it's Indiana Jones stuff that happens.
But it is hinted at that this thing has come from the stars. And
there's a star. There's a star.
Are they aliens? Did you write
map.
Aliens?
Exactly.
Rob Williams, did you write Aliens?
I did not. I didn't write Prometheus, but there is a star map, and there is they do find something. But basically, never go into a tomb with a star map on it. No,
that's right. That's all bad news. But basically, so the tentacle is missing from that hole, but you do see a reflection in his eye. It would look like it could be a claw or some type of something coming out, but it's very, very small, and you can't quite tell if that is what he's seeing or not. But that's probably the best.
It's
there,
open ended.
I will say now, there is definitely a Cthulhu-esque monster.
I knew it.
All right. That makes all the monster kids happy.
Yeah, but that was the intention. But I think it was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure someone. I might be wrong, and maybe someone who works at Dark Horse can say that my memory's terrible, which is feasible. But maybe they just coloured it out. Looking at it now in the trade paperback, I've got it in front of me.
Yeah.
All
right.
It's amazing how you how Lovecraft inspired you to write this, or at least have a Cthulhu type monster be the MacGuffin for this. What other literary leaders would you like to dip Indy into the realms of, like maybe of Jules Verne or a J.R.R. Tolkien? What would inspire you for another MacGuffin from some of the more famous literary?
Well, I mean, it's a dodgy thing, isn't it? Because it's like with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I mean, I think the moment you make it fantastical, you seem to kind of, I don't know. I part of me still thinks that sort of Indy was, Raiders was. It's in our history. It's like the Ark is in our history. The Holy Grail is. Obviously is the big obvious sort of MacGuffin that Indy should have gone after. I don't know. Maybe once you go into fantastical realms, I must admit, even though I wrote Tomb of the Gods and thought it was kind of a fun idea, afterwards you kind of think, I'm not entirely sure that's maybe what it should be. So it'll be interesting to see with this new movie.
Yeah, you're driving us into it. We referenced Indy 5 for shooting this summer. Rob Williams, writer, right? Yes. Steve Scott in our interview said, I want to work with Rob Williams again. He hasn't worked with you again. I'm the head of Disney/Marvel, and I go to Rob Williams and say, we're doing a monthly Indiana Jones comic book. Yeah. You're the writer. Steve Scott's the artist. You're in?
Oh, absolutely. I would have loved to have done more at the time. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. Where do we go? What do we do as a monthly?
See, this is where, I need paying to come up with that kind of answer. You see. That's
more whiskey.
More whiskey. Oh, yeah, well, then I'll do it.
Get this guy liquored up here.
Poker again.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, God.
Well, how about this? What do you hope to see for Indy 5?
I really don't know. And I must be honest, I'm kind of fearful because I just think it's interesting. I mean, obviously, all concerned could do a great movie, and we all kind of hope and fingers crossed and really hope. But it's just, I think, by the nature of who Indy is, there's so much physicality and Ford being 77 when he films it, you just don't know. I mean, the action stuff in Force Awakens was a little uncomfortable. But I mean, I'd love for him to go along and just be this. Kind of play his age. I would love that, and if he wasn't necessarily the one, who's going to be punching out Nazis and stuff, it's whoever the bad guys are. But if he
maybe like a Mad Max Fury Road kind of thing, where Mad Max sort of like took a little bit of the side, he was a bit off to the side, while Furiosa was sort of in kind of like the main role there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you just do that, and you got him. he's the veteran with the knowledge, and you put him. But if there was a sense of pathos about it, like this is the last rodeo, we're not doing this again, I'd be in bits. I would love that. If it's a Indiana Jones movie where we get a chance to kind of really feel the Ford plays age and just kind of go, we're not going to see this again, guys.
Yeah, no, listen. I've said this a million times. Disney doesn't buy stuff if they're not going to do a million things with it. If they're not going to put out an Indiana Jones movie every 2 years. Look, here's the thing. They've got to go back to the 40s. They've got to go back to the 40s. That whole era. What would you do with Indiana Jones in the 40s?
Well, you know what I would.
Go on. No, go.
Well, I kind of already did it. I mean, we at the IndyCast we put out a feature-length radio drama that took place in 45 after the war, with Indy going to the Bermuda Triangle.
It's Indiana Jones in the 40s after Raiders. He's in the military. It's the stuff that's alluded to in Crystal Skull. Could you work with that?
Absolutely. I love that era. I love the Cold War era and sort of directly just following the war. There's I'm a big sucker for whether this will work for Indy. I love all that sort of the fact that all this amazing tech at the end of World War II, went. This is a true story, right? So, and the amazing thing about it is, Ian, at the end of the war, there's a sort of gold rush for Nazi tech. So the British sent a small team one of which was Ian Fleming, the creator of Bond, and they went and they said, just grab all this. You've got to get to these Nazi scientists. But the British were so pleased the war was over that they sort of basically treated it like a bit of a rugby tour and went on the piss and just got drunk and sort of like caroused their way across Europe. The Americans treated it really, really seriously, and that's why they got the scientists. They got, Werner von Braun and Operation Paperclip and things like this. Yeah. And you can make an argument for the fact that if the British had treated that way more seriously, the whole history of the second half of the 20th century could have been very different, because so much of what propelled America out of the Second World War was a lot of
German technology.
Exactly. So. Yeah. So I'm kind of a sucker for that kind of stuff, and the fact that you could lean into kind of Foo Fighters and all whether it's sort of anti-grav technology and all that type of stuff, and maybe the war's finished and Indy kind of is chasing a lot of that stuff. But I don't know. I'm even talking about it aloud. I think it needs history. It's got to be at the heart. Indy chases history. That's a contemporary concern. So what could it be? I don't know. You could go. I think maybe it's been a trodden path, but you kind of go to kind of the Wandering Jew and things like this. Maybe it goes back to sort of religious themes and stuff. With I don't know. Maybe I'd need more time to think about it.
No, but that's a good stepping stone, and that's got you thinking, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is it. You lock a couple of people in a room and you don't let them out for a day, and by the end of it, they'll have a really cool MacGuffin.
So you and Steve Scott are ready to go, right?
We're ready to go. I'm not touching do you guys know who has the license these days? Because I presume Dark Horse.
It's Marvel and Disney.
Sure.
Marvel
and Disney.
Yeah. But Marvel don't seem inclined to do Indiana Jones comics anymore, do they?
Nah, they do what Disney tells them to do. They do what Disney tells them to do. We've got Harrison Ford shooting this summer. We're getting Marvel comics. I guaranteed an Indy 5 like what, Keith? 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Was I wrong? Was I wrong?
Well, you weren't wrong.
Okay, so we got Indy 5 coming. I'm guaranteeing Indy Comics. I'm thinking Rob Williams and Steve Scott on it. But what we need to find out now is what is on your plate right now, and where can we see you? Where can we meet you in person?
I'm still doing some work on the Judge Dredd TV show, which is in development. I'm writing more Dredd comics for 2000 AD. I've got a new creator-owned comic, which I'm very excited about, out in May, called Old Haunts from AWA, which is by me, Ollie Masters, and Lawrence Campbell. And that's kind of like Michael Mann. What if Michael Mann did a ghost story, basically?
Oh my goodness!
So a bunch of a bunch of retiring gangsters in Los Angeles. They're getting their big payday, and they're finally going to retire and get out. and then the sins of their past kind of literally come looking for them. So it's kind of like yeah. Well, it looks beautiful. We thought, love those Michael Mann movies like Collateral and Heat and how he makes like a contemporary American city look. And we thought ghost stories are always set in dusty old mansions, and we thought, wouldn't it be cool to do a ghost story set in a modern, sleek sort of Los Angeles? So so that's a cool one. What else am I doing? I'm doing Roy of the Rovers for Rebellion in the UK.
Full circle.
So the young adult title again. That's a comic I used to read when I was a kid. I'm probably doing other things that I forget.
How about a convention? How about a convention in Connecticut in August?
If you're paying, I'm there.
I think I know a guy that pays.
We think we know a guy that we can
I know a guy that's got a checkbook.
Okay, I know a guy. I'm going to end up on I'll end up smuggled out on a trawler and something.
All right, are you going to be in the States in August at all?
Not presently. I mean, I've got half an eye on New York Comic Con this year, but that's not confirmed yet. So I may be at New York Comic Con.
Our IndyCast buddy Mitch, he's always looking for Indiana Jones guests. Boy, this is one of the best, Keith. This is one of the best guests. I want to see these stories on the big screen. We got to get them. Tomb of the Gods, unbelievable comic series. We're spoiling it because we're going to review it in the next episode, but I'm going to spoil it right now. Keith and I love it. There you go. Rob, thank you, and thanks to Steve Scott, my goodness, for giving us one of the greatest Indiana Jones tales of all time.
Yeah, and give a bit of thanks to Jeremy Barlow, the editor at the time, who hired us and was a great guy to work on with it and contributed as well. So, yeah, but thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it. I'm really glad you enjoyed it.
Hopefully many more to come. Hopefully many more to come. Let's get Disney. You want paychecks with Disney on them, right?
Absolutely, man. I mean, they're going to do an Indiana Jones TV show, right, on Disney Plus. You know it. So
absolutely,
maybe it'll be Young Indy all over again or something.
Animated
Indiana Jones, animated Indiana Jones series.
You can write for that. Yeah. Thank you so much for everything, and thank you for joining us on the IndyCast.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks a lot for your time, guys. Enjoyed talking to you.
All right, there you have it, Indy fans. That is a behind-the-scenes look at Tomb of the Gods. A little bit back in the day, a few years ago with Steve Scott, but definitely with Rob Williams today. Man,
what a great
Keith,
time.
Oh, always have a fun time in the Raven's Nest, right? But
absolutely.
That was so much information on this series. Yeah. And again, we're going to be talking about this in our review, but spoiler alert, I think we both like it, right?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the better, more interesting, deeper Indiana Jones adventures. Fantastic. Can't wait to get really into it with you, to go over it next time on Further Adventures. Yeah, it's going to be our review of that 4-part Dark Horse series.
Can you imagine if Marvel launches another comic book series? They have to, right? Can you imagine these 4 to 6 issue arcs? That's what John Byrne wanted to do back in the day. They gave him 2 issues, and he's like, all right, I'm out. But can you imagine these 4 to 6 issue arcs that go on with
writers like Rob Williams and artists like Steve Scott? Yes, I can imagine. I can't imagine these stories. And again, like I mentioned in our intro, I would love to see more comics, more indie comics. We probably aren't going to get that many more movies. I mean, Harrison Ford is almost 80. At one point, they're going to stop making these movies.
Yeah, you and I diverge on that. I'm thinking Indy 6, Indy 7, Indy 8, Indy 9. I'm thinking it. I'm calling it. Yeah. Look, I called Indy 5. You guys all doubted me. I'm calling Indy 6 through 9 right now. It's going to happen. It's going to be a young Indiana Jones. They are going to look. They bought the property. They bought Paramount out for the distribution rights.
Is that bell going to ring, Indy? Indy! Ring the bell. Ring the bell, Indy.
It's going to happen.
Okay, that's it for the day then.
Well, thank goodness. As Indy says, that's all the time we have for today. But we will.
Class is in session, my friend. I'm taking you to school.
Oh my goodness! I can't wait for summer break. So we'll be back. We'll be back soon with our review of Tomb of the Gods. If you haven't guessed already, we kind of like it. We will definitely be breaking it down more next time on the next Further Adventures. Joe, can't wait.
I can't wait either. But look, this is an interactive podcast. Everything about the IndyCast lives off of everybody feeding into it. So we hear the book reviews, we hear Indiana Mick, we hear Ron with the trivia, we hear all these different segments coming in, all the John Williams segments. Get your reviews into us. The old Indy.
Old
shows
Indy.
Up from time to time.
He needs to be in the
That's the movie I don't want to see.
Old Indy needs to be in the tomb.
No, that's the movie I don't want to see. But look, Chris A. from the UK, I'm talking to you. Get your review into us. But everybody else, what do you think about Tomb of the Gods? This is one of the greatest Indiana Jones tales of all time. It is an awesome comic book. Issue 4, I don't know what happens. We sort of found out. We kind of didn't. Do you like Cthulhu? Do you like some monsters? There's tentacles and stuff. I don't know. What do you think? Get that review into us. Keith, how do they do that?
Pretty easy. Just drop us a line at thefurtheradventures@gmail.com. And send us your review, record an MP3, do whatever you want, but be sure to check us out on Facebook at The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones. We would love to hear from you. Can't wait.
Tomb of the Gods review. We are also working on scheduling an interview with Indiana Jones Adventures artist Ethan Beavers. That's going to be coming up. Our review of Adventures Volume 2. Oh, the Dark Horse years continue. Temple of Yearning. Oh, there's a radio drama out there. Go listen to it right now.
That's right.
Go check it. Go check it out. It's some cool stuff. There's so much good Dark Horse stuff coming at you. Can't forget about that. So much Dark Horse Indy goodness coming your way. And Indy 5, ready to go. Indy 6, Indy 7, Indy 8. I'm calling it right now. We're not going anywhere, kids. The IndyCast is going to live forever. More Indy comic booky goodness headed your way next time on The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones.